Yeah, it really looks like real life. Okay, Alex, you were about to say something about Red Smoke episode 12. Yeah.
Yes, because it's about Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah, you're right.
And I enjoyed this show a whole lot.
Mm,
Except I was gonna say except for the last season,
obviously.
but because yeah, everyone hates it. And compared to the others, it was really bad, and you could tell they
Mm,
just had to finish it somehow quickly. But it had some nice scenes, I guess. But generally, it was nowhere near even close to the quality of the prior seasons.
absolutely. Uh, you know, the thing is, I always wanted to talk about this show after, my head is a little bit cooled down, and it's interesting what you remember from it. Like, actually, it's been almost 2 years since the disastrous finale, and it
Wait, wait,
was
wait, wait. It's been 2 years already.
it's been 2 years already. It's
What?
yeah, I was
Damn.
I was checking it before on IMDb, and the last episode aired in May 2019, and
Wow.
I'm like, dude, time flies, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That's crazy.
And but by no means. I mean, it's mostly going to be like a praise or a character study of this whole thing today. But dude, by no means I'm going to say that this show was a piece of shit in the end of the in the in the eighth season. That was
No.
disastrous, man. I still remember it. How I like what you said. That you said. This the season eight. I didn't like it because everyone else didn't like it or something like that. That's like like what you said there. Uh, yeah, it's so. But what it's interesting is it's been 2 years now, right? And I look back on it, and actually I remember the good things. When I look back on Game of Thrones, I think that's a good show. Actually,
Oh yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
of course, there's this bitter taste of season seven, I would say as well, and season eight, of course. But apart from that, it's actually I would say it's a brilliant, good show, intelligently written and all that.
Yes, absolutely. I don't even know where to start, but generally, it was not just because the foundation, the books are obviously well written.
Mm,
So I wouldn't say it's easier then to make a good show, but it's definitely you don't need to come up with a whole story, right?
right.
But even then, because the basic story is very deep and very like lengthy unfolding,
Mm,
it's still not easy, I think, to make a good show out of it. But they definitely managed that. So it was really interesting, and
mm,
very yeah, you were very on the edge of your seat anytime you watched one of these episodes. And I remember, was it in the first, yeah, in the first season, episode 7 or something, when
mm.
Ned Stark, sorry, when Sean Bean like almost always dies. Spoiler alert. Um,
So that's when Ned
and
Stark almost always does. Like Ned Stark is a character in the
yes,
in Westeros. Like,
damn it, yeah, I mixed it up. But anyway, um, yes, I just was this was just something completely new that the
mm,
main character, which was introduced like as the main character, yes, just dies in the first season, and you were like, what the hell is going on here? And I enjoyed that. Obviously, I'm not like enjoying people dying, but enjoying the fact that they just tried something completely new there.
hmm
I mean, it wasn't just them; it was the story itself, obviously. But still, I don't think this, at least not in this scenario, happened before. And then, obviously, Game of Thrones sort of became infamous for its gore and its sexuality.
hmm
But it definitely was a key part of it, and I'm actually glad they displayed this so heavily because I think this is a big part of the times this plays in. Not just fantasy, but also because it's sort of set up in a like
yeah,
medieval time
medieval
frame.
time. Yeah.
Yes, and these were rough times,
Mm.
and I think this was displayed quite well.
It there's this nice sense of when Sean Bean characters when Sean Bean's character died. It was as a viewer you get the sense of okay, anything can happen now. And,
Yes,
and and I don't think I ever had this like on any other show because there's like always this sense of okay, mm, you kind of know how this show ends. You kind of know how the plot
yes,
goes. It's like those Hollywood stories, And watching this, I mean, I was spoiled in the beginning because I joined somewhere between season 6 and season 7, somewhere around that. I wasn't a Game of Thrones watcher from the start. So I
Oh,
was
I see.
obviously spoiled because of all the memes. Like this, do you still remember this
Yeah.
brace yourself meme and all that? This,
Yes,
man,
I
I'm
remember
old.
that.
I'm so old, dude.
Yeah, crazy.
And yeah, but nevertheless, I mean, I was surprised by scenes like the red wedding and all that, and I was like,
Oh
oh, I
yes.
never saw anything like that on television before. And
Yeah, it's
yeah,
yeah. Sorry.
and I remember we had a brief talk about in the last episode. We had a brief talk about David Benioff, the screenwriter from Troy, who was also
Yes.
the showrunner, or at least one half of the showrunners of Game of Thrones, and the screenwriter. Um, I, I don't know how much praise he actually deserves for Game of Thrones, because you said that. No, I haven't read the book by Martin, so it could be Martin's credit. Nevertheless, I know he also written the screenplay, or he wrote part of the screenplays, you can say. But nevertheless, it's a brilliant adaptation. I don't know how much Benioff can get credit for his work, you know, because obviously he fucked up in season 8.
Oh yes, he did.
Mm.
I mean, this was funny because they always said that Martin actually had something to say as well in season 8, but I just cannot imagine that he really had much to say because I think that would have ended differently, or at least, I mean, the whole season 8 was really, this could have been 3 seasons in regular Game of Thrones pace, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It was pretty much all crammed into this one season. And even HBO themselves wanted to have Game of Thrones for more seasons because obviously printing money, right?
Yeah.
But I think it was actually Benioff himself, or both rather,
Yeah.
who said they wanted to do something else, right? Was this? I don't remember which movie it was. They were asked to do.
It was actually Star Wars, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, it was Star Wars.
Ironic,
Exactly.
ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, very ironic. Good one. Yes. Yeah, but you see, one thing I want to get back to quickly,
Sure.
because you said this was so new to see actually the main character die in this show, and I was reminded about this when I was watching The Blacklist later, then after Game of Thrones, which is also a great show. But whenever the main character is in some sort of trouble, like even on the brink of dying, you just know he doesn't die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then the whole show would be over. And you see on Amazon that there are 3 more seasons or something like that, and then you just know, all right, he's not gonna die, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And yeah, that sort of takes the tension out of it, because in Game of Thrones, you never knew what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You just didn't know. Everyone could die at all times. And this really just gave it some sort of different meaning, because it was really very real. Everything that happened could have huge consequences, and this was just great to watch.
I don't know about you, but I'm also a bit skeptical and biased when it comes to things everybody likes. You know, everybody praises. I think that's the reason why I joined quote unquote the Game of Thrones fan community, if you will, because I don't want to watch something because everybody else is liking it. You know, I think if I would have gotten the backlash from episode 8, from season 8 there, I'll be like, okay, now I'm intrigued. Now I'm gonna watch this whole series.
Yes.
But yeah, the thing is, everybody was liking it. It's like, okay, this is probably not good. But then I watched the first season, like, oh, maybe I'm wrong, man.
No, I agree with you. I think I joined when season 2 was already finishing. So I definitely joined earlier, but still, the first season people were already talking about it, especially after Ned Stark died. Everyone was hyped about this show. And I had the same feeling as you did. I was like, come on, if everyone likes that, that's just always a bad sign.
Absolutely.
Not always, but it's usually a bad sign that it's just some mainstream mushed up trash. And yeah, this kind of turned me away, but I don't even know how I got to watch it. I think I just randomly saw a scene from it, from not episode, but from the first season. Not like something crazy, but it still looked cool and intriguing. So I was like, all right, just try it, the first episode. And yeah, I actually liked it. But I do actually know one person, a friend of mine, who I told he should at least watch like 3 or 4 episodes and then decide if he likes it or not. And he just hated it.
Oh, okay.
And yes, he just doesn't like it at all. And he never watched any more episodes. So yeah, there are some people who don't like it, apparently.
People are so weird. They were like, they're like doing diaries on the show, like writing stuff in their diaries about the show. They were like naming kids after characters. It's so crazy.
Yes.
And you know, I still can't quite put my finger on what happened in the end. Like what caused this whole thing, because you were just saying, and I think it's correctly as far as I'm familiar with the trivia, that HBO was actually offering Benioff and Weiss an extra season, or at least a 10-episode season, not like a 6-episode season. And I still, what's like your theory? Because I actually want to get quickly back to David Benioff, because I actually read a book of him, a novel. And I have to say, I can highly recommend it, by the way. I can also highly recommend Troy as much as you can, because it's brilliantly written, I would say. The book by David Benioff is called City of Thieves, and it is set, I believe, in the Second World War. I believe it's like in Stalingrad or somewhere in Russia. Pretty well written. And I was actually surprised, you know, given season 7 and 8, that like how can something like this happen? Was this like intentional? What is your take on that? How can something like this happen? Because everything else was top notch in Game of Thrones. Like the acting is always brilliant. The casting is so good. The music is great, and the production value and everything, except the Starbucks cup there. And anyways,
Yeah.
but what happened to the writers? What's like your theory? How can something like this happen?
I thought about this a little bit when this whole thing happened with season 8. And at first I thought it's just greed, because they wanted to make something as big as Star Wars and like a movie, not just TV shows. And I think they actually said something like that. They wanted to make movies. But it cannot really be the reason, because Game of Thrones was so popular and so successful. It can't be that you just move to Star Wars because you think that's better.
Yeah.
Because I think that was virtually on the same like level at that time, especially since Star Wars was going down. So that was kind of weird to me to make this decision. I mean, in the end, I guess it's really it must be the greed there, because, or maybe they were so sure of themselves because Game of Thrones worked so well that they can pull off everything, and decided to just bring this to an end quickly. Or there maybe one thing, I just had this thought, maybe they were just burned out with this whole thing after 8 seasons.
I heard about that
just
as
wanted
well.
to do something else.
Yeah, I heard about that as well. But it's funny because you said that George R. R. Martin probably had a saying in that as well. It was probably his ideas or his visions. You cannot say that, but the question is, why hasn't this guy published the last 2 books himself? You know, he still hasn't published them yet. So the question is, doesn't he have an answer as well? You know,
that's quite funny, because I actually read some post about this once from some guy who said that Martin intentionally, quote unquote, ruined the last season, so his books get much more praise when he finally brings the conclusion of the series.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much longer he can do this little game there, because I don't think people are gonna forget about it, but I don't think he should wait much longer, because it would be okay if we would like publish the book a few months after the 8th season, because there are people who would be like still warm. But nowadays, not a lot of people still talk about this show.
Yeah, so it's great we're doing a podcast about it.
Yeah. We are talking about the lost and forgotten TV shows, like the trash that was produced.
No,
Uh,
great. But I agree, actually. These days, nobody really talks about Game of Thrones
yeah.
at all, and the hype definitely went down. It might be due to the fact that people didn't like season 8 at
Mhm.
all. So this sort of maybe killed the vibe. I feel like when it comes to Martin and his books and finishing the whole Game of Thrones saga, I
Mhm.
think he's sort of afraid of finishing that because this is always the case with any story.
Mhm.
As long as it's going, it's very interesting, obviously, and people
Mhm.
have all these fantasies about how it can end, and they root for their heroes to win or their villains to win, whatever it is. But when it's finally finished, then there's some sort of void after that.
Mhm.
And however, this is a small path to tread here because you have to decide between people falling into this void after it's done and people getting bored because it's never concluded. So
Yeah, that's the thing.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a reader, I mean, it was hard enough as a viewer because like I said, I wasn't like a Game of Thrones fan from season one. I joined at season 6, and I had the privilege of binging it, and binging 6 seasons in a row, which is scary because many people have waited for every season. And I
Yeah.
joined between season 6 and 7, so I was like, okay, I needed to wait one more month, and then I was getting season 7. But after season 7, I think there was a 2 year break, which was a lot actually,
Yes.
which was a lot. And given that time, how did they fuck this up so bad? But anyways, yeah, 2 years to let your audience wait 2 years for a sequel, if you will, or the next season is a lot to ask already, especially in a time like this today. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the books, but I don't know how long George R. R. Martin is already letting his readers wait, and I would lose my patience with him. You know,
Yeah.
I would kind of lose the trust in the author. You know, because like I'm like, okay, I bought like I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 books. I don't know how many are published yet from you, and you know, I kind of like trusted that you would come up with a conclusion, and you still haven't. So
You,
you know,
you know
kind
what's
of
even
ruins
worse?
your reputation. You know. Yeah, you go on.
Yes, absolutely. You know what's even worse there?
Mm.
After, I think he wrote up until basically season 6,
Mm.
I think, and parts of 7 or something like that,
Right.
if I remember correctly. Book readers who are listening will now be very mad, but
Mm.
I know. And the funny thing is, he never concluded this whole story, but in the meantime, he actually published a book which plays in Game of Thrones before all of this happened.
Yeah.
So he did have the time and the creative spirit to write another book for Game of Thrones,
Mm.
but it wasn't to actually conclude the story that is running. So I would be pissed if I
Absolutely.
were a reader and was announced that he published a new book,
Mm.
and then it's actually the pre-story or something. And yeah, so he definitely still writes, as far as I know, and this is why I think it's not that he cannot write, doesn't have the time, stuff like that.
Mm.
I think he just doesn't know how to end it properly or is afraid of it. I think that's really the thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I mean, I always hear this argument that there are many characters in it, and you know, you have to like. But I've read more complex stories than that, and they
Yes.
have a good conclusion. So it's like a, yeah, it's like a bad excuse, if you will. But
Yes. And
yeah.
apparently he told the like Benioff and Weiss, apparently, we don't know if it's true, but it's what has been said back then, that
Mm.
how episode sorry, I keep saying episode, how season 8 ended
Mm.
was his idea. And so basically this is how the books will end at some point.
Mm.
And this is what he said, but I have a feeling that that's really not true. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Dude, I don't know why, but I also in the start of this Red Smoke episode, I keep messing with like the words episode and season. I don't know
Yes.
I don't know if that's a German thing or if something's in
Maybe.
the air. What's going on, man? Anyways, but yeah, the
Well,
thing.
but the German word is the same, right? It's episode.
Yeah.
And
So that's
so,
like
I don't know.
why are we messing it up, man? So that's crazy. Yeah. Mis-
Just
Mr.
classic red smoke.
Yeah, Mystery Thursday on Red Smoke, everybody. Yeah, the thing is also like George R. R. Martin is not like the youngest author in the world. So I'm like, I would be so pissed if he would like die. like, okay,
It would be.
yeah, at least give us some answers, dude.
The funny thing would be if, like, in, I don't know, 10, 20 years, whenever his time comes, and then it is released in some sort of safe, actually, the written books and how
Yeah.
they conclude. It would be sick.
Oh my god, yeah. It's gonna be like a treasure hunt
Yes.
for the answer. Dude, what I'm about to ask you now, this will, the past few minutes, it's also, it almost like you could call this like a nerd talk, but I'm okay with that. But what I'm gonna ask you now sound like a genuine nerd fanboy question. Actually, two questions, but there's no way I cannot let it sound like a nerd question. But who's like your favorite character in the whole series?
I like the build up to this question. This
It's
very,
like
very tense.
it's like, I mean, what is he gonna ask now?
Yes, I was a bit afraid, but it's actually a good question and a difficult question for me, to be honest.
If you had to
I thought
choose,
about
or you
this.
you can do like a top three if you want. Maybe it's easier.
Oh, does this make it easier? I don't know.
Okay, you don't have to like decide. You can decide like, okay, favorite three characters if you want.
Because if I really have to choose, like, how the character is completely, like, with physical and mental ability, and I'm gonna tell you in a second why this is important, then I will most likely choose Tywin Lannister. Obviously, right?
Right.
Because he's just, I guess it's mostly because he being completely unfazed by everything and prepared for virtually everything that happens. He just knows what's going on, like
Yeah.
500 steps before anyone else, and this is just some sort of mental setup I aspire to and really like. But the second character, or maybe even I like maybe even a bit better, is Tyrion Lannister. But obviously I wouldn't have his physical traits, so I would really just choose his mental abilities there.
It kind of compensates
Because he
for that,
also, yeah, he does. But he also knows just how people act, what they will do, like before it even happens. Obviously, he fails against his father a lot, although he kills him in the end, but still. And he's just, what I like about him is that he still finds the joy in life, which I think is a bit lacking in Tywin. He seems to have fun with what he does, but he sometimes comes off a little bit too negative for my taste. So I guess it's between the two there. Yeah.
Absolutely. I partially agree with you. It's hard because the episode is called ranking the Game of Thrones characters, and I was thinking about this a lot. Like how can you objectively rate the Game of Thrones characters? Like, I know it sounds so nerdy, but I actually want to do it like scientifical, if you will. How can you objectively rank the Game of Thrones characters? Because I don't know. Do you think you can compare a character like Tywin Lannister to I don't know, Jon Snow?
No, I don't think so. I know we are trying to rank them, and this answer makes it difficult, but I mean, they are not even in the same ballpark, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
While Jon Snow becomes stronger later, obviously, and sort of develops a proper mindset to at least not die immediately in this tough world of what Game of Thrones is, he's still nowhere near even close to what Tywin, like, not only achieves, but what he does and how he operates.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess you can rank it that way. Jon Snow is definitely below Tywin. But yeah, it's tough because they're really not in the same, like, league even, I would say.
I mean, there's the factor of personal taste, because when it comes to personal taste, or if whom I just like in this show, for example, my favorite character would be Littlefinger, because he's like, I think I said this in a stream before somewhere, I don't remember when, but like, this show is called Game of Thrones, and I always thought like this would be like turn up as the huge solution in the end, that this was all like a game. And as for me, Littlefinger was playing the game the best from all the characters. You know, maybe Varys as well, but yeah,
I was
Littlefinger
going to
was.
say Varys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both of them were like, I would say,
Yes.
players, and they understood the Game of Thrones, if you can call it.
Yes.
So yeah, as a
This
personal,
is
yeah,
this is also what I liked a lot about these characters like Littlefinger, for example, or Varys, or even all the Lannisters. Not all of them, but most of them. They understood just that they live in a dark world, and they didn't try to make it like perfect or make it good in any way because they knew they didn't have the power to do so. They knew, especially Littlefinger, you're right with that, and Varys, they knew this is all a game and they knew how to play it. Tyrion as well, I would say, he knew that this is a game, and he even enjoyed it to some degree. And with that in mind, they just knew how all these people are just pieces on the chessboard and that you can control them to some degree. And if you do this and that, this will improve your position and stuff like that. And if you compare it to the Starks, for example, which were the classic, like positive, good guys, but also very delusional in most cases about how the world operates, just being generally good people, which is, I guess, a trait in and of itself, but in a world like Westeros or Game of Thrones, it's kind of a waste because that's just not how it works. And as you can tell or guess, due to my brand, I like these sort of dark characters.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know how to rank them like correctly, but I would say, as for me personally, what I like in a character in a TV show is, you know, of course, there's like some sense of growth, which means the character doesn't end up where he started, except he was perfect in the beginning. And the second thing I would say is frame. Because you said something interesting about Tywin. Whenever he was under pressure, even when he was taking a shit and was like threatened by Tyrion, I remember he was never losing his frame. There's never like of course he sometimes raises his voice, but it is on purpose. He always does it. He always does it on purpose. That's a little bit what I mean by frame. And so many characters lost their character, so to speak, between season 6.5, if you will, and season 8. Then.
Yeah, I agree. This was also something, wasn't it, about the Khaleesi, right?
Yes.
What's her real name again? I forgot.
It's Daenerys.
Yeah. Because she was just completely different, and maybe this was intentional. I don't know. Just some sort of character development, just into the negative. Maybe, but still, Tywin definitely he had the like iron frame, which just couldn't be, not even like a slight crack. Like throughout the whole series, I don't think there was ever even the slightest crack in his frame. And this is truly something I admired as well, that you just knew whenever you encounter him, you just knew that he is more powerful than you. And it's just something that is kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was also like the only, the Sir Clegane, or like the mountain, or what is he called?
Yes.
I remember that he was like so, like Tywin was the only person who was like ever disrespectful to him, and is like, okay, well, he can, you know. And so I would actually say there's only one character, maybe two characters in the whole series that also never kind of lost their frame. I would say maybe Robert Baratheon, maybe, because I think in the end he kind of. But actually, the other one is a girl, and it's not a girl. It's actually an old woman. I don't know if you still remember the Olenna Tyrell.
Yes.
Like this woman is straight savage.
Yes, absolutely. I like the scene with JAIMIE Lannister in the end.
Oh yeah, that's like he's such a roast, man. Like,
yes,
like she went out like a real queen there, man. It's like wow, just wow. And there's actually this interaction between her and Tywin. I don't know in which season, probably season 4 or 5 or somewhere like that. And this is where the show peaked, in my opinion, especially the interactions between those two, I would say, alpha characters. And it's so interesting how they're playing like verbal chess with each other. It's so well written there.
Yeah, that's true. That was very well written. And it's quite obvious that she is also very powerful in her character. I mean, she's obviously not like the feminine woman you would want to marry, but she's as you said quite well, alpha woman, like strong alpha. Yeah, it's obviously her masculine side that's coming through, but she's very powerful. And she knows how to use it. And this has served her well. And the screenwriting, or the writing rather, for the scenes with Tywin were very great. Just two huge forces meeting each other. That was great. Yeah.
I think about the quote from The Dark Knight, like when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object or something like that. It's like what I'm thinking of, like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the series kicks off with Ned Stark, but I believe the first character that was more or less introduced was actually Robert Baratheon, who I would also call a fucking savage. There's this quote. There's this quote from him: "I'm trying to get you run my kingdom while I eat, drink, and whore my way to an early grave." This one sentence tells us so much about him. Game of Thrones King Baratheon, like this honest assessment of his motive to trying to tempt Ned Stark, into becoming his hand of the king. This already sums up the whole series, his character and everything. This sets the frame perfectly.
Yeah, and it's again framed there, and what I like about him, because he clearly and honestly states what he's doing, and it's not like really very something you can be proud of, just like drinking and whoring around while being king. But he has absolutely no issue with that, and he doesn't care about any judgment from anyone. It's just what he does, and this is another form of frame there. And this is very, very greatly displayed in Robert. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's I would say, of course, it's red smoke, like, and kind of like talking about masculinity and all this stuff. And I think masculinity is embodied within those powerful males there. And I would say there are like characters like I would say Robert, and of course Stannis Baratheon as well, as a little bit like a counterpart. Ned Stark and Tywin Lannister. Those are like I would say Robert Baratheon, Ned Stark, and Tywin Lannister. I would say three absolute alpha, hyper masculine figures who are, kind of like mainstream heterosexual, And what's very interesting is I actually thought about that a lot, because I don't remember about Robert, but when it comes to Ned Stark and Tywin Lannister, just an interesting choice of style. They're never shown sexually in a show that is basically soft porn, if you think about it. I don't know why I discovered that, but we never see them like fuck on camera. As weird as that sounds from me, I gotta say, I feel like weird to see Tywin in a sex scene. I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm saying this, but it's interesting that in a show where sex is a little bit associated or represented as power, none of these characters have like a sex scene of some sort. It's always those sneaky characters whom we see doing it,
I actually like you bring this up, because this is truly great, and something I have also said many times before, that at some point most men, once they discover true power and how to run their own purpose in their lives powerfully, they ascend above the sexual things. Now that doesn't mean that they don't care about it anymore. Obviously we all have like urges, but it's not something that's on your mind constantly. You have just bigger goals than laying women. And this is greatly, and I didn't notice that when watching the show, so glad you bring this up. But you are correct. These alpha, true hypermasculine guys were never seen in these sort of scenes, and this is a great choice, because it makes them, in my opinion, even more masculine in that regard. And I think this is also something which is a complete issue in today's society, that people think just because you like lay a lot of women, that means you're now an alpha like guy. In my opinion, that really just means that you know how to get from women what you want, but it doesn't mean that you're good at life. True. These are two different things, in my opinion. And this is, yeah, I mean, I guess we live in a sexualized society, and obviously this was also
Obviously.
displayed in Game of Thrones very well. So this makes sense that people come up with this idea. But I think this was greatly displayed, and we talked about this before in Troy, that Benioff definitely
Yes,
knows how
yes.
to make very masculine characters, and he definitely did this with Game of Thrones. They were very well displayed.
He understands male female dynamics as well as male
Yes.
male dynamics, which is even more important, I think. Let's just kick off a little bit with Robert Baratheon there, and let's see how far we come. We might even have to do like a two-part series out of it because there's like so many characters. Let's see, maybe we do a two-part series. I would pledge that Robert Baratheon has every single characteristic that a king has to have. Like, he's tough, macho, masculine, physically strong, and combative. And I was looking up a dialogue from the script from Benioff and Weiss very early, season 1, episode 3. I'm gonna read it out loud. I'm not gonna even attempt to do a impersonation of him, but I'm gonna try it. It's a dialogue, you probably remember. It's a dialogue between Robert and Jaime Lannister, and it reveals a certain notion of masculinity, which I'm gonna ask you something about afterwards. And yeah, I'm just gonna read it out loud. I'm just gonna
Yes.
see where this goes. So Robert Baratheon goes, "We're telling war stories. So who was your first kill? Not counting old man." And then Jaime goes, "You're one of the outlaws in the Brotherhood." And yeah, there's a third person Barristan. I'm gonna ignore him. And yeah, it's interesting that Robert Baratheon next says, "You're outlaw. So was there any last words?" And Jaime Lannister says, "I cut his head off, so no." And Robert Baratheon says, "What about Aerys Targaryen? What did the Mad King say when you stabbed him in the back? I never asked. Did he call you a traitor? Did he plead for a reprieve?" And Jaime Lannister says, he said the same thing he had been saying for hours. Burn them all. And yeah, that's just a quick dialogue. For some, it just might be a piece of dialogue. For Robert, or yeah, I would say this revealed so much about Robert's character because, like I said, first of all, he says, "Who was your first kill?" And I imagine, look, for Robert, being a man is about being strong and eventually being a killer, and that's so interesting that's what's important to him. This conversation is a very masculine dialogue where both men like share anecdotes concerning their first kill, and as Robert says, old men don't count as kills. Robert is the ultimate patriarch of Westeros. I think if most men would talk to another man, and if he would tell them, "Well, I killed someone at the age of 16," I think most men would be silent in that moment.
Yeah.
They wouldn't like. I mean, what Robert does is, well, okay, how was any last words? Like, he's almost like horny for for knowing that. It's like, "Oh my God, tell me more about it." It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is obviously due to the setting in a very rough time frame where killing was just normal. But it was also, yeah, I like how he is completely like unfazed and actually
Fascinated,
expecting
yeah.
yeah, fascinated and expecting that the other man actually did kill someone or even a lot of people. So this is like completely normal.
Yeah.
And through talking about this, he is trying to get at what kind of a man Jaime really is, because he wants to see how he killed these people, because he knows that he is this kind of backstabber who just killed the king cowardly, so to speak, for whatever reason might be, but it was indeed an unhonorable kill.
Yeah.
Is this a word? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Don't ask a German one, man.
Yes. So anyway, he's trying to get behind Jamie's curtain, so to speak, what he truly is, and he does this by asking these questions. But it's not just that he want to know who this guy is; he's also just very interested in this sort of masculine thing, especially back in the days, to just kill other people because war was just natural. And I have said many times before that men are built for war. Even these days, it just doesn't exist anymore in that sort of thing. But we are made to fight, to be competitive, to be at war with people or in general. And so this is definitely missing from people, that we have these very open and direct talks about tough things.
Yeah, you can also say that Robert kind of embraces violence and killing.
Absolutely.
Almost like almost all other male characters in Game of Thrones. Yeah, absolutely.
This is, I think, also a big difference towards Ned. And I mean, we're gonna go to Ned later, I guess, but just quickly, a difference here, because Robert definitely enjoys it, and he's enjoying violence and feeling it, and But Ned, even though he is also a violent person and he has killed men, I think he doesn't really enjoy it or doesn't like it, and he tries to avoid it if possible. So there's definitely a big difference between the two.
Yeah, we can jump forward to Ned Stark there, because as far as Robert Baratheon is an example of, I would say, hyper masculinity in today's terms. The second example would be Ned Stark, but in a slightly other way, because Ned Stark is like considered to be king and Robert's hand and best friend. He's like highly reliable Lord of the North. He's deeply respected by everyone, and King Robert also, like, he relies on him to make his major decisions and all this stuff. And again, for his character, I think you were referring to a certain scene, because it actually happens in the first episode of season 1, in the very first episode of the series, where Ned and his son Bran, they have this little talk, and I'm just gonna read it out loud again, because it's like such an interesting. It's like after this execution, where you just said that Ned didn't enjoy it. It was like an execution where you could say like Ned had to do it, and the conversation goes like this. Ned says to his son, "Do you understand why I did it?" And Bran said, "Jon said he was a deserter." And Ned said, "Do you understand why I had to kill him?" Then Bran answers, "Our way is the old way." And Ned goes, "The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword." And Bran goes, "Is it true he saw the White Walkers?" And Ned said, "The White Walkers have been gone for 1,000 years." Bran says, "So he was lying." And Ned goes, "A madman sees what he sees." He's trying to mentor his little boy there.
Yes.
And Ned highlights how important it is, or what it means to be a lord and a hand of the king, and what he's supposed to do at times like this. Passing a sentence and swinging a sword to take a man's life. But
actually, yes, I actually liked the scene a lot, like a whole lot, because here's something to think about for all the listeners. These three men, right? Robert and Tywin and Ned.
Yeah.
They are all considered very masculine, right? But they are very different in what they do. Like evil sometimes, or very good in in case of Ned. So masculinity doesn't really have to do something with if you are good or bad, right? It is something else. And this, I think, is greatly displayed in this scene, because he takes full responsibility for what he does.
Yeah.
This is the key we come back to like all the time, right? That it is even said in this sentence that he who says the sentence also has to swing the sword. That means when he decides that someone is doing bad or has done something bad, then he has actually to do or to make the consequences out of it. This is his duty as a man. And I just liked the scene a lot, because it's such a great display of masculinity in this case. And especially what you mentioned as well, that being a king is not just like whoring around and drinking, as Robert says. I mean, in the beginning, he couldn't do this as well. When Robert was a king at first, he had to do other things as well. And ruling his own kingdom is not easy, or your own kingdom is not easy. And there are decisions you have to do which you don't like. For example, back in the days, or in this case, killing someone or executing someone. And is it this key part of being a king that even though you get all the praise and all the cool stuff, it also means you have all the responsibility, like all of it, and you have to take care of virtually everything, and it is all your fault when shit happens. And
Yeah.
if you want to be king of your own life, gentlemen, then you have to live with that. That's just how it is. And this is truly greatly displayed in this scene.
Yeah, you also said that, I don't know to which character you're referring. I think you were referring to Tywin. That you said he's almost perfect, but he doesn't like enjoy life, you know. And it is so greatly displayed. There's a interaction between Ned Stark and Robert, where they're like in a tent, and Robert does this stupid joke about the breast stretcher or something. I don't know. It's
Yes.
like breastplate stretcher. Sorry, there's no such thing as breast stretcher, I think. But anyways,
Maybe, I don't know.
if there is, I'm sure it is somewhere in Westeros. And yeah, you have this interaction where he's cracking jokes, and he just sees that Ned is a little bit like in thoughts, and it's like, yeah, he's like laughing. And then Robert just gives him a drink and says, "Here, drink." And Ned says, "No, I don't want to." And it's like, "Your king commands you," or something like
Yes.
that. And you can just see, like, yeah, in how different they are and how similar as well. Because one of them is like truly enjoying himself, lacking the responsibility as well. But Ned is like so focused with. I would say, look, Ned is a courageous and honorable man, which makes him a pretty virtuous guy, of course. But virtuous, and I think that's something you talk a lot about. Actually comes with a price, and Ned's frankness results in his imprisonment. You know, his honesty makes him kind of blind to other people's plans. You know?
Exactly. Yes, being a virtuous man has one big drawback that your enemies know exactly how they can control you, right? And this is exactly what happened to Ned throughout pretty much all the series, when the Lannisters especially knew exactly what he will do because of his virtues and what kind of man he is. And this way they could set up traps. So while being virtuous or having your virtues is great because it makes or it creates a better life for you and the people around you in general, it also makes you vulnerable to some degree. And yeah, this is what is the issue for Ned there. And I think this is also what is greatly displayed with like good versus evil all the time. That and what I talk about a lot with psychopaths, that because they don't have any sort of virtues or rules, at least not the classic ones. So they are tough to judge what they will do, how they react, and things they will end up doing to you or to others. So it makes them unpredictable, and this is what people don't like, because if someone is unpredictable, he can also strike at any moment, which is exactly what the Lannisters are, in my opinion. I think they are a family of psychopaths, and they display this quite well. And it has worked for them, obviously, but it also makes them, pretty much hated by everyone else, because they just cannot put them in some sort of drawer to get an idea of what they are about.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say on one hand, Ned is like bound by honesty, and there's also the scene where he cannot bend the knee to King Joffrey and accept him as a king. But on the other hand, he loves his daughters, and he must not forsake them. So he eventually bends the knee to Joffrey and confesses his quote unquote treason, so his daughters can be saved. Yeah, it's so interesting that you're dealing with a show where the honesty of a man causes his downfall. You know, that's
yes, there are many displays in Game of Thrones which I liked, or not liked, but I thought were quite telling how the dark reality truly works. That the good guys, for being honest and being good people, very often actually like fall down because of it.
Yeah.
And people might think this is like cynical or even bitter, but I think to some degree this is just reality, right? And you should strive to be a good person as much as possible, in my opinion. Even though using your dark traits and all of that, still try to use it only for your benefit and other people's benefit, right? But still, just being a blindly good person is very dangerous and will get you killed in Game of Thrones, or will get you like lost or being broke in real life. So the world is a dark place, this just reality, and this is probably also why I like Game of Thrones so much, because even though it is fantasy with dragons and all of that, and it plays in a different time, it still is a great display, especially how people operate with each other of real life and power, especially.
I keep being reminded of like scenes I've seen from, I don't know, like some demonstrations or people were like trying to fight for human rights or something, and then you see like tweets from their wives that says, okay, like today is like the anniversary of like my husband died 3 years ago because he was like demonstrating for Trump, or I don't know what the fuck, whatever, right? And it's like, okay, maybe he was doing the right thing. Maybe he was being virtuous, but, you know, I think being virtuous, I don't know if you would agree with me, and acting accordingly leads to sooner or later make a choice between yourself and your family. Isn't that the case?
No, I think so, yes. This is true. If you... Yeah, you will have to make this decision, just like Ned Stark had to, between being virtuous and not bending the knee to this mad, young, spoiled little brat as king, or saving his daughters. And obviously, well, not obviously, but I guess especially for Ned Stark, he would save his daughters. And this is also why people oftentimes say that a man's biggest vulnerability are his children, obviously, because he will do virtually everything to keep them alive or to keep them safe. And this is also how evil men can control good men. And it's being done all the time. And yes, so if you have your virtues and you are a good person, at least to some degree, and you have enemies, then you will eventually have to make a decision there. And for example, or rather the example you brought up, I don't know if demonstrating for or against Trump or whatever it was the right decision as opposed to being with your family. I don't know if that was really worth it. I'm not sure.
And it's a thing like a little bit of being blind, you know. Being too virtuous makes you actually blind for reality, I would say.
It's also a bit of naivety, in my opinion, because I'm not saying that people shouldn't demonstrate. Actually, they should do it more. But if your own life is on the line, I don't know if this demonstration is really going to change much for you. I mean, obviously, in demonstrations and people, or rather, which turned out violent, this had some sort of effect in the media and thus maybe changed things, of course. But in the end, you always have to look after yourself and your family if this works out that way. And I know some men have this idea that it's better to die for the whole meaning of history and humanity than to be alive for your family. This is a decision everyone has, or anyone has to do, to make for himself. I don't know if I would do it, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty difficult to say. Yeah, I think it's a personal decision.
Yeah,
but definitely nothing in the world of Game of Thrones that that's a little bit what I was referring to that the show is called Game of Thrones, you know, and that's I kind of thought that little thing I was doing it the best. But who led to Ed Stark's downfall was, of course, Joffrey. And I would say he's also, like from a character writing standpoint, brilliantly written. One of my most favorite characters in all of TV and movies and literature and all that. Nice. Joffrey's such a obvious product of like I would call it damaging masculinity. I don't know if this word exists, and I'm sure in some like gender study class it does. He offers all the proof we need. Just like how much problem there is.
Yes, he's just in my opinion, he's really just he's just a spoiled brat, pretty much.
I wanted to say the exact same thing. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go.
But not just that. It's also that he was born into power, being a spoiled brat, which is even worse. And then nobody does anything against it. So he gets his positive reinforcement loop that what he does is actually good because it works for him at least, right? And and I don't think it's even due to age, because we know from real life history that there were kings who fought wars at the age of 15 against like 2 other countries, which is funnily enough in my book. And it was the king of Sweden. And he like was a very great man. He was obviously for his age completely like sure of himself because he was king and he was fighting 2 big countries. But it's definitely how Joffrey was raised. And yeah, being a complete spoiled brat and the favorite of his mother, and this sort of created this character everyone hated.
Yeah, so like his sense of identity was grounded in, he's like, okay, I have the right to do everything I want because I was born a king, stuff like that. But there's also this problem because you just said that you should use your powers for good, and I wouldn't say Joffrey used his powers for himself, like in an egoistic way. He used them for straight evil.
Yes.
Like threatening his mother to killing prostitutes with a crossbow and chopping his father-in-law's head off, forcing to rape his bride. He was an evil sociopath, and simply because he could be.
Yes. Yeah, because there was virtually never some sort of restrictions on him what is good or bad. He just learned that he has the power, and he didn't ever hear anything about using it in some sort of way that makes sense. He just used it, and because people were afraid of him, that gave him this feedback loop to even do it more. Yes. And again, he's naturally, I don't know naturally, but he's definitely a very evil person. And again, the actor who actually can never play another role ever in his life.
Sure for that.
Yes, he actually played him very well. I gotta admit that. Because you could even see in his eyes when he was like threatening these people with his evil like actions. You could see how he just enjoys being that evil little brat. He just enjoyed it so much. You could very well see that, and I like that a lot. This actor really played this very well.
They made such a good job at hating someone that doesn't even exist. Now, I hated the character of Joffrey so much. It's like such a great job with the casting there. It's so interesting. And
yes, and
yeah,
one thing I just wanted to add, because you said that he just knows being born a king that he can do whatever he likes. He even says this later. The king can do as he likes.
Yeah.
But actually, the first time I think in his life, and it was his grandfather who taught him a lesson there. Yes, very, very great.
Sent him to bed without supper, like the king.
Yes, exactly. And this was such a great scene, obviously played by Tyrion Lannister, who really knows how power truly works.
Yeah.
And this line actually stuck with me for a very long time, and I still think about it these days. When he said that a king who has to say he is the king is no true king.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this is so true and so deeply true also in so many facets, that if you have to say you are something, then you are not that person. This has to come naturally, and people have to sort of put this title, if you want, onto you. If you have to say it, then you are not this kind of person. And this is so great, and was so I guess it was also fan service, but it was also great to watch that this kind of asshole finally got sent to bed without supper. So it was so nice.
Hilarious scene, I gotta say. I needed to laugh out loud.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it was tense, but dude, who says to a king, go to bed now? What the fuck? But Joffrey kind of, I would say there's a word that describes it. I would say it's damaged masculinity, despite being so young. He's neither brave or, he's relying on others for his victories, and then he claims all the credit like a true coward. No wonder everyone hates him. It's like so. Yeah, it's almost comically.
You put this very well there. He's actually a coward, to be quite honest, and he has never achieved anything on his own, like nothing. Yeah. Everything that his power, so to speak, reigns on was done by other people. So I think this is also why he tries so hard to display that he is the king, because deep down he probably knows that he isn't actually someone special, but he has this title, and so he has to sort of live with it. But yeah, this is definitely a form. I like the term there, damaged masculinity. He is displaying all the sort of negative or traits that can be used negatively as from a masculine man, and a man that has too much power, and is constantly used in a negative way because he is so his personality is so damaged, really. So yeah, great term.
Absolutely. So what do you say about Jaime Lannister? Because that's an interesting one. I wouldn't actually call him amongst the powerful patriarchs like Tywin, and so we will get to Tywin as well. But Jaime Lannister, from a character standpoint, until the last episodes of season 8, actually has been one of my favorites. Like he went through such a nice circle. You know, started off as an asshole, and we grew to like him so much. It's so interesting. He starts off as, I would say, a pretty powerful patriarch at first, but as the series progresses, Jaime, first actually loses his father and actually his hand as well, which results in this loss of power, and then Jaime's character shifts a little bit to a complex version of masculinity. Very interesting character. What's your take on him?
I think his development is actually very deep and also quite interesting, because if you think about it, in the beginning, I remember the scene where he was wearing his shiny gold armor in the house with Ned Stark, where Ned asks him, I don't even know exactly what he said, but it's basically something like, your armor has never been tested, right? Something like that. So Ned doesn't even know if he's truly a man that knows how to fight. But Jaime says something about that. So other people cannot judge how he really does in fighting. And so in the beginning, he is this powerful guy, but there isn't, as far as we know at least, there isn't much behind that. It's sort of a facade, if you want to call it that. Because you don't really know what he's up to, what he knows, what he can do, right?
Yeah.
And then he loses his power, and he is faced with himself, and that all his power really relied on, like, for example, his fighting hand, or the power from his father. And then he notices that there is something within him that can make himself powerful, right? And then he discovers that. And I truly enjoyed this development of him, that he sort of discovers his true self through losing something near and dear to his heart.
Yeah.
So this was really, a great development.
Yeah, it's also this, it kind of humbles him a little bit after he loses his hand. And he starts to question it all, and he even turns on Cersei in the end of season 7, I guess. And then he even joins the North when the White Walkers appear. And of course, after that, the whole shit went down. Because that's, I believe, from all the character assassinations they did there, I think Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi wasn't assassinated that much as Jaime Lannister was in season 8, because he did such a nice development there, from a complete asshole who is he was like throwing Bran out of the window in episode 1, I think. What kind of person does this? And he kind of went full circle. In the end, he joined the North. He even faced Bran again, and he fought amongst other people to save, kind of like the fight to save humanity. He turned on Cersei. And then there's this interesting interaction before the end, because Jaime in the end goes back to King's Landing suddenly to go back to Cersei. That's the thing I never understood. It's such a huge middle finger to his character. There's even this interaction in season 8, I think it's episode 4 or 5, where Jaime and Tyrion have a little conversation, and Jaime says, "Oh, by the way, I never really cared much about the innocent people." Because and I remember I was listening. It's like hashtag not my Jaime, dude. Yes. like what is this? Like an episode before that, he was going all the way to the North, where everyone hates him, just to have the chance to fight amongst the living, so to speak. And suddenly he goes like, but I don't really care about much innocence. Yeah, I want to fuck my sister again. What the fuck?
Yeah, I remember watching the scene and I thought, wait, is this an outtake or what's happening here?
Yeah, yeah,
Because that made absolutely no sense and it was completely out of character for him. And I don't know if they tried to sort of bring flashbacks from the past sort of in his mind or something,
yeah,
but that truly made absolutely no sense, especially not when he just came back from fighting for the innocent people and then
yeah.
the next sentence is, yeah, fuck them. That's just bullshit.
Yeah, also,
And
yeah,
yeah, you're right. He actually had a very great development because in the beginning he was simping hard for Cersei, right?
yeah.
He was really that kind of loser type who does everything she says, like virtually everything. And towards the end, he made this great development where he actually confronts her and pretty much shows her the finger, right, for being a stupid bitch, which is what she was. And then all of a sudden he just runs back to her in her arms, and it's just, yeah, this is another part of the last seasons that just made no sense.
Yeah, he also like started to for the first time he started this quote unquote healthy relationship with Brienne.
Yeah.
But I think them like screwing around, there was like also just fan service. Because
Yeah.
they're having a sex scene and like the day after, Jamie just like fucks off and what's going on there, man? I don't get it's like a whole season is missing between those two scenes. You know, I mean, I would be okay with Jamie going full circle and going back to Cersei, but I feel like there's something missing. You know, I mean, he
Yeah,
went.
that would have taken more time to
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
develop that.
Same
This
thing.
has been generally, sorry again for
Yeah, yeah,
interrupting,
sure,
but
sure.
this has generally been the issue with the last seasons, especially. I don't know if we ever going to talk about her, the Khaleesi, but in her case, just to briefly talk about it, her development, especially in season 8 or 7 and 8, was so rushed that made just no sense at all. And this was generally the theme of the last seasons, which is, I guess, what people didn't like, and I didn't like as well, because there was just the feeling that so much is missing, which we just didn't get to see, and we were just faced with the results of it, but that just made no sense at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can quickly switch to the character of Daenerys here because, yeah, this is something that I think it just said the same thing when not Tywin. Oh my god, Tyrion and Jaime were in the tent in season 8,
Yes.
and they're having this little interaction where Jaime suddenly says, "I don't care much about innocent." You're saying, okay, maybe put in some flashbacks to explain, but that's like a lazy way because I still remember
Yeah.
before episode 5 aired, before Daenerys burned the whole city down. Every time before the episode starts, we get like relevant flashbacks, you know. And I remember
Yes.
episode 5 started with the voiceover of I don't know who says, yeah, every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. You know, like to remind people, oh, by the way, this can happen, but this is completely
Yes.
out of character anyways. I mean, you can put in as much flashbacks as you want. It narratively doesn't make any sense.
Yes, especially, I mean, when she sits on that dragon, right,
Yeah.
on over the city, pretty much right before she burns the whole city and all the innocent people. This is, I guess, that you get a few seconds of her shifting facial expressions, and I guess the actress tried as much as possible to get like 2 seasons of character development into these few seconds.
Yeah.
But you can tell this was what they were trying to do, that she suddenly sort of get these flashbacks from the past, what happened to her, what the other people did to her, especially the Lannisters. She decides to kill them all, but it was still truly weird to me that this all happened within a few seconds. So it's like complete season missing there.
Hello, Rich. See you joined.
Hello there.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's going on, Rich? Everything's going well?
Yeah, I'm just enjoying the morning coffee right now, getting through some work before I go to train.
Excellent. Thanks for dropping by so quickly. We were just talking about Game of Thrones. Rich, I'm like a huge fan of like breakfast TV and all this stuff. Do you have this stuff like in the US?
Have what in the U.S.?
Alex, we in Germany we have something that's called breakfast TV, don't we?
Yes, we
Because
do.
because we have like this new time slot for Red Smoke, and it's something like breakfast TV, if you will, because now we are live when the U.S. kind of wakes up, and I don't know, Rich, I'm familiar with this kind of stuff because breakfast TV has this reputation of being extremely terrible.
Yes.
I don't. I mean, we have some morning shows out here. I don't think anybody even watches TV anymore. It's mostly everything streamed like Disney Plus or Netflix over here. So I don't even think people are up early in mornings anymore. They just like they sleep in, or if they are up in the morning, it's just to go to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, Alex, are you much like? Are you still watching like TV? If you will?
I never watch TV actually, like not the regular TV at all. Just shows, pretty much. That's it.
Nice. And, Rich, how's the weather over there, man? Because like summer kind of broke out here.
It's warmer. We had a little bit of a thunderstorm and some heavy rain come through, so it cooled off a bit. But that spring weather's definitely here, of course.
Excellent. So, Rich, kind of asking why we got you here, man, because I remember I was talking to you yesterday, and I was asking you if you want to come on a show real quick, and I'm aware you were saying that you were not that familiar with the whole topic of Game of Thrones and not that familiar with the series, but nevertheless, I thought it would be a good idea to get like a fantasy expert in here because I would definitely consider you as a fantasy expert on the field.
I definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, and you're always welcome here. And yeah, I was asking because Alex and I are trying to figure out how to correctly rank characters, and I wanted to know like you have written like your first book already, and I think if I correctly read it on Twitter, that you're already working on a second book. So what's important for you when you write characters, or if you would rank your own written characters, what is the important thing to do there? What makes a good character, you would say?
To me, good character development, especially if you really want them to stand out, give them interesting traits. Don't make them bland. Don't just generically assign certain things to them. Give them an actual personality, and then watch them as they go into different events. See how they react. Almost put them on like a quadrant or a matrix of their personality and have them act well within the bounds of that. So that way you get more organic reactions to how that character would react, how they would handle the situation, and then throw certain encounters towards them that really test them and change them and see what may change naturally about their personality or their mentality to cause character growth. And then gradually or abruptly do that depending on what the story calls for and have them go forward. But I was always a fan of having interesting characters. You want characters that resonate with the reader. You want them to be relatable, but you also want them to connect with your reader. If you have a character that just has so many things that doesn't make them relatable, how is someone going to better enjoy, especially if the characters are what drive the plot?
Absolutely. Alex and we were just talking about a certain character from Game of Thrones. I don't know if you're familiar with Joffrey, or the character of Joffrey in Game of Thrones. And we were talking about how what a great job they did with making us hate someone. Do you have like someone like that as well in your book, like a character you just have to hate? And what do you think is like the recipe to that?
I don't have a character like that yet. I've got a few, but considering the series has just started and there's nobody that long overarching to hate yet to that level, it's going to be works in progress. But I do plan to have that character that keeps popping up that it's like the reader's going to be like, I detest this person more and more. Because they did an excellent job with Joffrey. Like, he's a dick. He is a dick. And everybody just unrepentantly hates the guy, and for good reason, too.
It sounds like it, right, man. So Rich, what I'm about to ask you is, it is a question Alex was very afraid of me asking, because the anticipation was like so big. So I'm not gonna do the same stuff with you because I don't want to scare you, but I'm just gonna ask you like, outright straight. Nerd fanboy question. Who is your favorite character in the whole Game of Thrones series? I'm aware that you're not that familiar with it, but if you would have to pick one, or maybe two.
I would have to say they go between Ned Stark and the Red Viper of Dorne.
Oh,
Oberyn
nice.
Martell.
Oh,
Nice
it's Oberyn, right?
Yes.
I believe so.
Oh, we haven't got to him. We have already talked about Ned Stark. What is the thing that makes him, in your point of view, such a good character? Because we were just talking about him. I would like to know your point of view on that. What makes
He was immensely relatable. He was a very efficient leader. It's unfortunate the way he met his end, which I was like, man, they did my guy like that, but it kind of his own, I guess, character and honor in a sense worked against him to that regard when he was set up and framed. I'd like to think that there would have been a much more efficient way with Weil to get out of that, but he obviously wouldn't have acted underhandedly. He was a man of honor, and that sadly worked against him because I love characters that have a code of honor about them. And he was one of the few that did. Because most of the other characters I don't care for as much. Well, except Tyrion. Tyrion grew pretty well throughout the series, and then Oberyn Martell. He struck with me when I was younger, and actually, I poked my head in Game of Thrones when I was younger. Like, I read the first book, I watched the first season, and then obviously people talked about it so much online. You could just get synopses and clip notes from people.
Yeah.
And he, despite being super impulsive, which I'm not a very impulsive person, but I do respect, he had a lot of drive, he had a lot of fury, he was a man of passion, and he was going to go out there, and he said, I'm here to live my life. I'm here to do it with some flourish and grandiose, and I am not sorry about it all. And I absolutely love that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Alex, what's your take on the Viper character? I think it's Oberyn Martell, yeah.
Yes. Great character, again, because, I like the writing that he is this sort of aloof master he just doesn't care too much about the things that happen, because he sees all of it like an enjoyment. He has just fun with life, especially when he is the champion for Tyrion, right? Because he's virtually, he has a deep reason of revenge to do this, but still he's risking his own life to fight for someone else, so to speak, even though he has other intentions. But still, he's just enjoying this kind of thing. He's smiling all the time, even though he's fighting some huge dude to death, pretty much. And he's always this. It's also in his body language a lot. I think that he's just
Chad.
Sort of, Chad. And I like this aloof kind of thing that he's just above all of this, and he's fine with whatever happens. And this truly a great display of this character. Yeah.
We talked about sexuality in Game of Thrones, and there are many queer characters in Game of Thrones, and the one that stuck out to me is, of course, the Viper, Oberyn Martell. He openly reveals his bisexual identity, while characters like, for example, Yara Greyjoy or Renly Baratheon, they're like secretly gay. And Oberyn is like, I don't give a fuck. I basically, I fuck what I want. So it's like, it's such a, because Rich, see, we just talked about this topic that actually the most powerful people in the whole Game of Thrones, for example, like Ned Stark, you never actually get a sex scene, which is interesting because sex is always a little bit associated with power. But Oberyn Martell, this is basically our introduction to him. The first thing we see is he screws around with like anything that is there.
Anything, well said.
Yeah, like
I like that.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain the political correct language here. Yeah, Rich, what's your take on that? Do you think that sex can be associated with power, or do you use it maybe as well as a narrative tool?
I would definitely say that it's long been correlating with power and the very act of it. Some people use it as a show of dominance, which unfortunately is the case with rape when it comes to that too, because it's not necessarily just the act of saying oh, I'm doing it just to do it. It's because someone's trying to violently and vehemently show dominance through sexual domination, and in the worst way possible too. So naturally, on a more consensual level, yes, those that say, well, the more partners that I can rack up because they find me attractive, they're attracted to my power, my status, how I carry myself, because therein lies the correlation to, well, I have power with this. And I mean, I will give props to the guy in the show for not only he had his main girl give him a whole bunch of children, but his main girl let other girls come on too. I thought that was cool as shit.
And there are other boys as well, man.
There was that too. I don't care for that as much because that's, I don't go that way. But
Yeah.
hey, the show was written for other people that they may enjoy that. That's the aspect I like. That he had his one main lady. I forget her name, Ilaria, I think.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I think she was actually the equivalent of like a bastard child, like Jon Snow, because she took the last name of Sands, and I think that's how the whole naming thing works with that.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
he was one of the few. He was not ashamed to show her around, because generally having a bastard child was like a thing of shame, and he's like, I'm not ashamed of that. Fuck you. And he pretty much is like, yeah, this is my gal right here. And then she's like, ooh, there's some other girls here too. Let me bring them on. And then had him a whole bunch of kids. I was like, you know what? For that, I respect that.
Yeah, it's so funny because most of the time something like homosexuality is always displayed as some kind of weakness, not only in media but also in real life. Like every time someone is homosexual, they like automatically go into the victim role. I'm like being oppressed and something like that. And then you have such a beautiful character like OBERYN who deals like the complete opposite way, who is like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. I fuck what I want, basically. And I think I can respect someone like that more than a heterosexual person who is like insecure or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Anybody, I don't care what orientation anybody is, if you display a willing weakness and that you like being a victim, it translates across the board. It doesn't matter what race, creed, belief, orientation or gender that you either born or identify as, to stay politically correct. If you're willing to be weak, you are willing to not take the initiative to make your life better and to always play the victim and take pride in being the victim. I don't care who you are. There's no respect in that lane whatsoever.
Absolutely. Alex, what do you think? It's always that like homosexuality or bisexuality or whatever it's called is always associated with weakness and victimhood and all that stuff.
I think this is only done by the people who need external validation through social media, to put it that way. Because I think the people who are truly like homosexual or trans or whatever, they don't want anyone to know about this. And not because they are ashamed of it. I mean, maybe in some cases, but most cases, they just want to be left alone, right? And it's always the people who scream the loudest on like social media or the media in general, who sort of wear this as some I don't know, kind of shield, trying to shield them off other people who are not even interested in oppressing them. Nobody cares really what I mean, most people don't give a shit what you do with your dick. Most people just don't care, right? But they sort of draw this attention in, and this is what I have discovered, that the people who do this, I don't know if they are faking it, maybe not, but they definitely need the external validation. And the people who are truly like homosexual or whatever your orientation is, they just want to be left alone and live their life. And this is usually how I think it goes down. But again, as you said, I like this as well with this character rather, that he just didn't care at all. It was just funny.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. Rich and Alex are going to ask you both because, as for me, if I would have like a son, I think Alex is the only one around here who actually is a father. But if I would have like a son, and he's like growing up like 16, 18 or whatever, and if I was asked, what would you do if your son was gay, And I would be like, I wouldn't mind if he would turn out like a character of like OBERYN Martell. Like, I wouldn't mind for a second. I would mind, though, if he would be heterosexual, but be a pussy, you know? Would you,
Yes.
would you agree with me?
I would agree with that. The important thing is to have like a substance of character. Like if I had a son and he was bi or he was gay, I'd be like, look, as long as you're still going to uphold family honor, you're going to continue to be raised with the morals and uphold the ones that I instill in you, and that you may live an honorable life, and that you will take care of your circle, and that you're not going to be a coward. You're not going to be a victim. You're not going to live on your knees. You know, you're gonna stand and die on your feet. Then, absolutely, he's gonna be born however he is. Yeah, I'm still gonna love him. He's my blood. You know, family is family. So as long as he doesn't turn out to be a coward, he doesn't pander to anybody, and he lives the way he should. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm being faced with the character of Oberyn Martell, and I'm like, what am I about to answer if someone like that? Like, it's so interesting because in the first scene of when he's being first shown to us in the series, I think he's being faced with Tyrion or with JAIMIE. I don't know who is there, and they are like speechless. They don't know what to say to a character like that because they're like so overwhelmed. Like what is this guy? You know. Yeah. And that's a little bit what I was trying to say, because if I had a son who would act like that, like, what am I about to say against that? There's nothing I can say against that. You know, he's like his own king, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and he's very quick to defend the honor of those around him. Like he had a hot-blooded temper on him that if his family, especially Ilaria or like any of his daughters, were disgraced, I mean, he'd get up in arms real quick. Yeah. And like that. To me, loyalty, again, it's a trait that it doesn't matter what your background is, man. If someone's got your back and they're willing to stand up for your blood and your circle and your friends, that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Alex, would you agree with that?
Yes, I think the difference really here comes because obviously Oberyn he's not homosexual, he's bisexual, right? So
he's like everything sexual, I think.
Oh, everything, yes. All of it's sexual, yes. And yeah, because I think for many men, or like fathers rather, what they sort of fear is when they have a homosexual man. It's not only the honors, obviously, like having a weak son, this is one thing. If they like turn on to be this person, but I think if you raise them properly, homosexual or not, this shouldn't be an issue. But what I think and what I have thought of as well when I thought about this question is that if he's like only homosexual and like only with men, then your bloodline sort of dies out, right? Unless you have more children. So either you have more like brothers for him or sisters to continue your bloodline, or he is bisexual. Otherwise, this will die out. And I guess this is the fear some men have, but this is also some sort of selfish fear there. So I guess, yeah. Yes. If it's, I mean, yeah, as a father myself, if he is happy with that and he is still a great man, that is, because I have seen homosexual men which are much more masculine than some sort of heterosexual guys I've seen. So this isn't really the question for me there. If he is like a great man still, then he can do whatever he wants with that thing, to put it that way. Yeah. But yeah, I think for many it is the question of the bloodline dying out.
I think it's also, you said it pretty nice, because you were starting your sentence and you were like, well, I would be mad if he would be only homosexual. It's like, okay, that's the only thing that defines me, you know? Because many people are like, okay, what's your job? Well, I'm homosexual, you know. Like they have no real identity or like purpose in life. Yeah. I think to many people, like, their sexuality is actually their purpose, which is tragic, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. If he would say the only thing that defines him is that, then I would be disappointed. Absolutely, because this is not what defines you as a man or as a person even. Yeah. And yeah, you need something else above that. If that is your sexual orientation, okay, fine, this is something you do. But what else is in your life, right? So, yeah.
Rich,
I agree with that too.
Yeah. Rich, you were bringing up the topic of family honor and all that stuff, you know, and we had like the last hour we were actually talking like about those apex patriarchs in this show. But there are also characters in Game of Thrones who aspire to be those patriarchs, but they cannot do due to certain shortcomings or incapabilities. And not to make any joke about that, but I think the best character, and I think one of your favorite ones, is, of course, Tyrion Lannister, dwarf by birth.
Was shortcomings intentionally chosen there as a word, or
I'm not gonna answer that question.
Okay.
But Rich, Rich, what's like your take on it? What makes him so likable for you? Because he's a very, very interesting and intelligently written character there, of course.
Yeah, those are main draws too. But the fact that he goes through one of the best growth arcs of the series, where he starts as very indulgent, very, I wouldn't say too boasting of his own intelligence and wit, but almost to a point to where it rubs people the wrong way and it almost gets him killed. And you don't want to always have to bare your fangs like that. But he goes from that to being shamed, to being deluded, to being disillusioned. And then one point in the series, he's just constantly just getting drunk all the time with like a lack of aim and purpose. And then eventually pretty much unfucks himself from himself and comes around and decides that he wants to actually start making change upon the situation that's before him, and starts taking up mantle and getting himself into the mix of things, and becomes someone that he upholds his words. You know, he genuinely cares about those that he deems worthy to be cared about, and shows he indeed upholds his honor, especially by the Lannister family code. A Lannister always repays their debts. So he definitely is good to watch in that sense, and to grow on you as a character. He changes so drastically over time for the better. It's almost like, how could you not like that about someone that comes from that? And of course, he doesn't have combat prowess, so he has to constantly think, talk, and wit his way in and out of situations to better maneuver himself and position himself.
Yeah, I would actually disagree with you, because I loved him from like season 1, episode 1 there. I gotta say, because there's this little interaction Tyrion has with Jon Snow. And Tyrion says, let me tell you something, bastard. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like an armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. That's such a beautiful thing. And then Jon Snow replies, what the hell do you know about being a bastard? And Tyrion goes, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. Boom. Yeah, that's how you make someone like, don't you?
Yep.
That's absolutely beautiful.
That was a mic drop right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like season 1, episode 1. It's like, wow.
Yes. I mean, the first episode has a lot of like plot already in it, and it's kind of weird that people don't like it after watching the first episode alone, because a lot of shit happens there.
Yeah. And
you already get introduced to great characters like immediately, and especially throwing a punch like that, like Tyrion did there. I immediately liked him after that scene. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's not like being portrayed as a victim, but because of course naturally we care about the hurt animal on the street or something, because it's human, but it's not making us root for someone. But if we see like someone has like those shortcomings, again, not intentional, but and then we see he doesn't want our pity. Like, he knows how to care about himself. This is what makes us really like him. And Rich, I don't know if you would agree, but Tyrion actually has only one critical weakness he has to overcome. I think I would say he's easily distracted by women and alcohol, isn't he?
Yes. Oh, no, he definitely is. What is he, the self-proclaimed god of wine and tits, I think?
Yes.
Yeah. He has that hubris trait, which it'd be his weakness, as well as a few others in the show too. And it's like, if you don't have that self-control of that, then, as we spoke in the previous episode we were all on together, self-control is a big defining trait of masculinity. Right. Not to say he's without, but he definitely shows the lack of self-control in the earlier season.
Yeah, Alex, would you agree? Like it's kind of like this character able to make their own luck, kind of like this, like a adapt to new circumstance, and then he kind of amplifies that after killing that whore he attempted to marry, or he did marry her. I don't remember it. It's kind of like
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely matures a lot throughout the series, I think, which is where I agree with Rich that his development is also very great. In the beginning, he's this sort of, he's just living his power from his family, or his house rather, and having all these women and drinking all of that. A little bit like Baratheon, like Robert.
Yes.
Baratheon.
Yes.
Where he's just enjoying the power he has, but throughout the series he discovers that he is actually more mature than he thinks he is, if he puts in like the effort into being a great man and even great leader, as being the hand of the kings or the queen. And I truly enjoyed his development as well, that he turned from this guy who is just into easy pleasures and cannot really control himself with that, even though he is probably more controlled than most men. He turns into this man who has himself under control and does even more other people as well at some point. So this was truly a great development.
I also like the dynamic he has, especially him and Tywin, because Tywin is this Tywin is this apex masculine guy, and he's like ashamed of having a dwarf as a son, and Tyrion kind of tries to. He's also like actually on trial, like he said, in this great.
That was
scene.
such a great scene.
Absolutely.
God damn it, I loved that one.
Yeah,
when he was on trial there for this.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'm guilty of far more.
Joffrey, right? Yes.
Yeah. It's like I'm guilty of being a dwarf. I've been on trial for that my entire life, and Rich, what would you say is like the practically what is a good way to like wear your weakness as an armor, so to speak, just like Tyrion says it, like a disability or a weakness. How does one use it to your own advantage?
It's much like the old adage of, if you can laugh at yourself before anybody else can, you're damn near impervious to any humor or barbs thrown your way. It's the same thing with any shortcoming. The start, you have to address the shortcoming with yourself, and I mean, you have to really dig deep at it. Like, what about you hurts you the most? Then acknowledge it and really get comfortable with it, and just go, okay, this is a big shortcoming of mine. I want to A, work at it if I can. B, if it's something I cannot change, then I'm going to proudly accept it. And a lot of people go the way of, fuck it, I'm gonna make fun of it, in the sense of to do it for a sense of levity and to make light of it. So that way other people can see, oh, this doesn't really bother me. It's not like putting an elephant in the room. There's no tension. And like an example, someone who like loses an arm or a leg. There are a lot of people nowadays that they proudly show that, and they go, hey, I lost a limb for whatever reason. Most I've seen combat vets, and they show that life goes on beyond just losing an arm and a leg, and they just make stuff happen. There's actually an athlete named Derek Wida. He's a really well-known one in the military and the fitness community. He was an army vet that lost one of his legs, and it messed him up for a good few years. Like, he didn't know what to do. All he wanted to do was be in the army, go out, kick ass, and take names. And so when he lost his leg, he got into the CrossFit community, started competing, started winning, and then from there he just constantly put back out and say, hey, I've struggled with this before, but I'm still gonna, make light of it, make jokes, and show that life's worth living beyond a tragedy that happens.
Absolutely. Rich, would you say that being a man, it's your responsibility to compensate for if you have a disability? Because I would say that Tyrion wasn't born an intelligent man. He had to learn wit and game and all of that. It kind of, I believe, compensates for it. Do you think it's your responsibility, if you are like disabled in some way, to compensate for it yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Without a doubt. It is on you to find a way to compensate and shore up that weakness and make it a strength of yours without overcompensating. There's a fine line between that. There's a fine line between making sure that you're acknowledging what is weak or deficient in you and making it into a strength that you'll work on versus, well, I'm just going to be overtly flagrant about what I have and just go over the top with it to the point where people are like, okay, yeah, what are you covering up for, buddy? And it's a fine line you got to ride. But yes, I do believe, without a doubt, it is up to a man to step up and say, hey, this is where I'm deficient. This is something I need to overcome, or at least live with and be real about it.
Yeah. Alex, where do you see this fine line between, disabled and compensate and overcompensating it?
Well, it's difficult, and I guess it's also like different for any sort of person. For some, really depending on what sort of shortcoming they have, it works better to be crazier with it. For some, you should be more restrained. But in general, I definitely think, and I agree with that, if you have some sort of shortcoming from the, let's call it the norm of what people like or enjoy, then you have to make up for it if you want to be successful in any sort of regard. It's also, I usually don't like to pick up artist guys, right? But they have one thing, right? When they say that if you are a shorter guy, then you have to be more flamboyant to actually make, like, to get to be noticed by women, right? Yeah. Because the tall guy obviously gets noticed immediately. And if you are not, then you have to make up for it. And this is pretty much the exact same thing. If you have any sort of shortcoming, you somehow have to make up for it, yes. But don't get too crazy about it, otherwise it just seems like silly.
Absolutely. There's also Tyrion's elder brother, Jaime Lannister. We already talked about him, Rich, but I think now is a good time to just kind of like do a little callback there, because after being kidnapped, he starts off as like this apex patriarch like his father, but when Jaime gets his hand chopped off and he wears this metal golden hand in replacement of his own hand, he's now kind of emasculated and becomes another half man, so to speak, like his brother Tyrion. It's interesting what he does when he struggles and he suddenly loses his power. It's like a nice arc there as well. What is like your take on his arc?
I don't know that much about Jaime, but I would imagine if that's what he struggles with. The cliff notes and the summaries I've gotten from people, obviously, internet spoiling characters and the like, it sounds like he became a better person later on in the series. Now, granted, I don't get behind the incest shit. They can have that all they want. That ain't me. But I hear he becomes a better character overall. He becomes a lot more kind. He becomes a lot more understanding as time goes on. It's not to say he was ever dishonorable, but he adheres more to it as time goes on, from what I grasp.
Absolutely. Yeah, Alex, what's your take on that? Like, do you think Jaime dealt well with this emasculation?
Yeah, I think so. He did it quite well. I mean, in the beginning, obviously, I thought a little bit that he's just being too crazy about it. But then again, if you lose an arm, I mean, maybe it is kind of tough.
It's like kind of like having a breakdown at first, and I think it's relatable.
Yes. Yeah, of course. But at first, he's like completely crippling depressed because of it, and I guess it went a bit too crazy. But I guess it's intentional because it just shows you how much of his own personality he actually relayed onto his ability to fight, and his arm really, which was then completely taken from it. And as I said before, he then needs to learn to rediscover that he is not his arm or just his arm; he's a whole person. And he does this quite well, actually, later. Oh, yeah. Except for the last season, as we mentioned.
Another great character, I would say it's like, not want to say disabled, because Jon Snow is also, unlike other characters, he has no disability or like physical shortcoming. He's actually a pretty strong and handsome man, if you can say that. But he has a different kind of problem. Despite being the son of Ned Stark, he has this reputation of being the bastard son of Ned Stark. And this is something that haunts him throughout his life, which is very interesting. he's already like he's always reminded of his past, of his heritage. I just like in the interaction I just quoted between Tyrion and him. Let me tell you something, bastard. Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like an armor. Yeah. You know, the thing is, again, what I find interesting, because I don't know why we kind of circle around the topic of sexuality here, but I find it really interesting because Jon is strong, handsome, heterosexual, though asexual at first. Is there like some sort of guilt issues or something like that? Rich, what's your take on Jon Snow in general?
I would say in the beginning, his withdrawn, kind of observant nature probably stems from the shame he received and the stigma around being a bastard child early on. And then through his experiences between the Night Watch and having to return to his family to handle the White Walkers and the claim for the throne and the like, it forces him to rise above beyond his station of what he perceived himself as. And he kind of has a moment with himself where he goes, well, am I still just a bastard child? Or am I still linked to the Stark family, and Winterfell needs me as well as the Seven Kingdoms do to aid in not only the war for the throne, but as well dealing with the crisis of the White Walkers threatening our very lives. And he kind of throws caution out the window with that and kind of moves past that to step up into a more heroic role.
Yeah. Absolutely. Alex, what's your take on him? I believe he's, for many people, or he has been, for many people, kind of like a favorite character, or the everyday guy, if you will. So what's your take on him, Alex?
I was going to say that because I like this, that he is born the sort of bastard son, because he is not royal in any way, even though he lives with a royal family, but it's not due to his bloodline or his, except, of course, until we discover later that he is. But in the beginning, he's this regular guy pretty much, so everyone can relate to him. And I like his progress then, that he discovers that there is more in him than just the label that has been put on him, being a bastard son or being a Snow. And I think this is really just a display of what most men go through in real life, that they have these labels on them, that they are regular people, a regular person, a regular man, not something crazy. And if they manage to discover that there's actually more to them, and they can do more, and they have more in them, and might even be riding dragons, right? As Jon Snow does it in Game of Thrones. There is a lot of power in man, and this is what I liked about his character. He's sort of this man who isn't much in the beginning, but discovers that he can be much more, and this is truly what I liked about this character arc.
He's kind of like he starts to embrace himself, who he is,
Yes.
during the show. Again, I don't know why I always come back, but I keep being reminded of those sex scenes there are, because just like Ned Stark, his father, he's like pretty asexual throughout the series, and when he starts to date this whiteling girl, he kind of also starts to, you know, he kind of grows. You can see it in the beginning. He's like a shy boy, and after that he like metaphorically becomes a man as well. You know, he becomes this powerful leader with this strong heterosexual identity and this leadership identity, and his bastard reputation kind of fades away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but great point. He is still one of the masculine guys who isn't too much bothered about laying women.
Yeah.
In the show, and which is rare in the show, but also, as I mentioned before, a great display of not only just self-restraint, but also having higher goals than just getting some pussy. So this is truly also, in the beginning, it seems almost like he is like an incel, like he cannot get it. But you notice pretty quickly throughout his development that he's just not interested in that too much. He has just higher goals, like getting rid of his reputation as being the bastard son and finally meeting his destiny, so to speak.
He's almost seeing like sex as a temptation more than fun. he's always like trying to refuse, and I don't want to. And it's like until the end, he actually does. But yeah, it's interesting how he has like a complete different perspective as, for example, I don't know, the Viper Oberyn Martell, who's like openly displays it, and Jon is like, yeah, I don't know. It's like an interesting shift of character there. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, before I ask where's Ed Sheeran, because it's like mostly, it's like, Rich, I don't know if you have. You said you're not that familiar, but you probably know that Ed Sheeran has had his cameo in the show.
Actually, I didn't.
Yeah, he has, like, I believe it's in season 7 where he just randomly turns up, and it's so distracting, man.
I actually hated that because, you see, we talked about this when we were talking about Star Wars and the Your Mama joke in the newest episodes, which I told you pulled me completely out of the experience of this universe. And it was the same seeing Ed Sheeran in Game of Thrones, because that just told me again that this isn't real. I mean, obviously it isn't, but when you're watching it, you are like sort of immersed into this whole scenario and this whole world of Westeros, right? And then you see Ed Sheeran, this weird dude, and you're like, what the hell, man? What is he doing there? This is just bullshit. And yeah, I think this was actually a very bad decision. I know people liked it because it was funny. I think it was stupid in a sense of like writing and the show itself.
I mean, and obviously they had him. They needed him to sing a song there as well. Like, fucking course. Yeah, Alex, where do you rank Ed Sheeran amongst those other characters? I don't even know his name in this series, but yeah.
I was gonna say, what's his name as a character? I think he has one, or is it Ed? I don't know.
Rich, if you haven't seen it, like, just go on YouTube and look for like Ed Sheeran cameo in Game of Thrones. It's just so hilarious because it's not actually a funny scene, but if you see it like without context, it's like just looks like a weird cosplay there, to be honest.
It's like it pulls. Okay, so with like TV and entertainment, it's suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
Well, then they suspend your suspending of disbelief when they do something like that, and you're like, oh, now I'm pulled back to reality. I'm not having fun anymore.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a little bit about the whole meta thing, because I sometimes, Rich, I don't know about you, but I was never being exposed to a show like Game of Thrones before, where they were using like I would say R-rated language, if you will, because I was growing up with like Lord of the Rings and stuff, and then I was watching the first episode of Game of Thrones, and just like I said, like suspension of disbelief. I get out of the experience. I was like, am I watching a TV show? Why are kings using words like fuck and stuff like that? Is it like normal for you, or is it also something that gets you out of the experience a little bit?
It's half and half, depending on the tone set. It can make sense in some things. Obviously, they go on the heavy side of it to the point where it seems like it almost pull you out of the experience. But if done well, done tactfully, then I think it works. But like you, I also have that side that generally in fantasy they have a much cleaner prose when they have dialogue. It's something I just grew up along. So generally, yeah, like in fantasy, you're not going to hear a lot of swearing, or at least one wouldn't think they would.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's probably like in a dark fantasy setting where things are a lot more gritty or just overall more vulgar.
Yeah, for some reason it kind of comes up to me as modern, I don't know why, but I associate this R-rated language with extremely modern stuff. So it kind of gets me out of the experience when I see this in like a medieval setting, some way. I don't know why. Yeah. Alex, what's your take on that? On the whole, the way the language is forged there.
It didn't actually occur to me in that sort of regard.
I mean, you
while
kind
watching
of
it.
get used to it, you know, from time.
Yeah, I
But
guess.
the first episode
Yeah.
was so, oh my god, what am I watching here, man?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
There was kind of a lot of that in there. And thinking about it, it doesn't make too much sense with Game of Thrones, right? Because in the end, this is still some sort of a classic royal sort of language they would be using. Especially if higher languages like, what's it called again? Never mind.
Yeah.
They have high languages which are very difficult, and then you wouldn't think they would talk in this vulgar language, right? Especially like the big houses, like the Starks and the Lannisters. So it is a bit weird, yes, and like it didn't pull me out of the experience like your mama jokes do, but it's still a bit, misplaced. I think, I would agree.
Absolutely, yeah. By the way, guys, the Night King, toxic masculinity over there. He literally does nothing. He just walks around and resurrects people from the dead. So definitely a bad example there.
Yeah, what a waste.
Yeah, what a waste. Oh man. Yeah, I'm afraid we're out of time. We're definitely gonna do a 2-part series out of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Rich, it was so nice. I was so surprised that you said yes yesterday to just like casually coming onto the show. It's always nice to have you on. Rich, are there like any news from the Metal Shogun over there? Like maybe anything related to your second book? Anything you don't share with your Twitter followers, but only with the precious Red Smoke audience? Anything new to come?
Second book's well underway. I was actually working on it a little bit this morning, so progress is definitely coming through. Other than that, I've just been kind of low key, making some moves with the family. So it's been good stuff. A lot of things starting to line up to become more efficient. The last month's been kind of busy, so usually when I get in the sauce with things, I kind of just keep low key. But there's some good things coming on the horizon.
Even more the reason to say thanks for coming on tonight, even though you've been so busy. Still got made some time to come on. It's always a pleasure, Rich.
Likewise. I require little to no prep, man. You just give me the top of what you're on. I'll jump in and chop it up with the best of you.
Yeah, see, bro. I was writing it on Twitter the other day that it's so funny when you get someone like you on a call. It's like after 2-3 minutes, like you're your best friends, stuff like that. It's something very, very, very nice about you, about the way you talk, about the way you quickly adapt to a conversation. I always get the impression when you are joining us.
Yeah. For me, it's just organic. I don't overthink conversation. I'm very natural. It's just almost intuitive kind of people skills. I've always been good with people and continuously just worked on it. So, I mean, to me, it's just making conversation and just joining in on something with people. It's almost second nature to me. And I'm pretty easy to talk to. I don't try to put myself off as like very tension making or, very hard to approach. I like being easygoing with people and just, I don't know. I'm a people person at heart. That's just how I am.
Obviously, I'd say that makes a perfect podcast guest. To be honest, I feel like this is like sorry if I'm saying this like outright, but yeah, attributes like that make for a perfect podcast guest. Absolutely.
Yes,
I've
definitely.
been told by people that they're like, you need to start doing your own video series, but I want to wait till I have more time to dedicate to that because I know I'm gonna want to go just all out balls in with it. But I like doing the jump on other shows and just being able to talk with people. Like I love doing this. It's nice.
You should definitely do that, man. Do you have like any concept yet about like the you said like a video series? Because I was I was seeing you casually drop like little short snippets, little short videos when you have like a thought popping up in your head and you just like post it on Twitter. Are we talking about something like that?
Yeah. It may be something like where I've gone in the past where I just go on Periscope and do something, but
Right.
I was thinking of it maybe doing half like live vlogging, like lifestyle, because I do travel a lot and I love people being able to see my travel videos. And obviously, like people that they've watched those, been met with pretty good reception. So it may be like a mix of that and just kind of like the whole, hey, this is what I'm doing today, or just like, oh, this is a topic that popped in my head, and and just rip off it, just whatever comes to mind. Not really, I don't really have anything planned. I'm not trying to be like, hey, what's up, YouTube? It's me again. We're about to get into it and give like a 10-minute intro in a video and only have like 5 minutes of content. Like, no, I hate that. I just want to load the video up and just go, hey, let's get to it. Boom, and you get into it.
Hey, Rich, Alex and I are gonna come personally for you if you're gonna start a YouTube channel like that with like 10-minute intro and sponsoring and all this.
Please do. For the love of God, if I ever start doing that to where I just continuously add this filler dialogue in there for no reason, please, for the love of God, come for me and shut my camera down.
We're gonna come for you, man. Don't worry about it. We're gonna hold you accountable to that. Absolutely. Yes. Now, Rich, I'd love to see more of you. I think I think you're kind of like talking about like a vlog thing. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you can call it like that. I think you're a perfect person for that. I'd love to see more of that. Love to see more of you. I'd love to see more of your traveling stuff in there. I think that's a good idea. Definitely. All right. Okay, Rich, I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to end the stream right here. I'm going to do a second part. You, of course, are welcome to join the second part. We have like maybe 20% of all the characters in Game of Thrones covered so far, and like I still have some work to do. So if you want to, I was going
to say, if I can interrupt quickly, even though Tywin Lannister is on the cover of this episode, we didn't talk too much about him. But this is classic Red Smoke, so I'm not surprised.
This is a clickbait. Yeah, this is definitely, yeah. We fooled the audience. Rich, don't take notes for your upcoming YouTube channel. This is not how you should do it, man.
I mean, I don't think there's really a formulaic way to do it. As far as you put content up, people like it, they watch. The more they watch, the more it grows, so on and so forth. That whole jazz.
Absolutely, yes. Now, Richard, I think you're gonna do fine, and by the time you will do that, I think you will gain even more followers. I've seen you growing, and your Twitter following grows from day to day. So I think the more your followers have, the more this whole vlog thing makes sense as well. I'll certainly have some viewers there. I'm sure about that. All right then. Let's call it a day. Maybe we see each other next week. And again, thanks, Rich, for coming on. And sorry, guys, about the Tywin thumbnail, but I'm not gonna change it. I don't want to. Yeah. All right. Okay. See you next week, guys.